In the gray sprawl of the city, where hurried footsteps echoed against concrete, Sarah moved with a quiet purpose. She was a librarian, her days filled with the soft rustle of pages and the murmur of patrons. But every evening, as she left the library, she carried a small paper bag, a sandwich, an apple, sometimes a pair of gloves or a handwritten note tucked inside. These were for Amos, the man who sat on a tattered blanket outside the corner store, his weathered face half hidden by a frayed hood. To Sarah, he was more than a shadow in the city's margins. He was a person, and her small gifts were her way of saying so. Sarah's colleagues noticed her routine. At lunch, they'd raise eyebrows over their coffee cups. Why bother? Karen, the head librarian, would say, her voice sharp with practicality. He's just a drifter. Probably spends your money on booze. Others chimed in, their words laced with pity or scorn. You're too soft, Sarah. He's not your responsibility. The comments stung, but Sarah only smiled, her resolve unshaken. She didn't know Amos's story, but she saw the way his eyes softened when she handed him the bag, the way he'd nod and say, "Bless you, miss." That was enough. Amos was a mystery to the neighborhood. His clothes hung loose on his thin frame, and he spoke little, his voice rough but gentle. People passed him daily, some tossing coins, others averting their eyes. To most, he was a nuisance, a reminder of the city's failures. Sarah heard the whispers, accusations that he was lazy, dangerous, or worse. But she saw something else, the careful way he folded the notes she left, tucking them into his coat like treasures. She wondered about his life but never pried. Her kindness wasn't about answers, it was about consistency. Months passed, and Sarah's routine became a quiet rhythm. A sandwich in autumn, a scarf in winter, a note in spring that read, "You are seen." Her colleagues' jabs grew sharper, especially when she skipped after-work drinks to make her delivery. "You're wasting your energy," Karen said one evening, rolling her eyes. "He's not going to change." Sarah shrugged, her heart heavy but certain. She didn't need Amos to change. She needed him to know someone cared. The library's annual gala was approaching, a grand event where the city's elite gathered to celebrate literacy and fund the library's programs. Sarah, who usually avoided the spotlight, was to receive an award for her outreach work with local schools. She felt uneasy about the attention but prepared her speech, her thoughts drifting to Amos. She wondered if he'd ever had a moment like this, a time when the world saw him. She left an extra note that week. "You deserve good things." The night of the gala, the library glowed with chandeliers and laughter. Sarah stood in a simple blue dress, her award clutched tightly as she finished her speech. The applause was warm, but her eyes scanned the crowd, half hoping for a familiar face. Then, a murmur rippled through the room. The doors swung open, and a group of strangers entered, men and women in crisp uniforms, their faces solemn yet proud. At their center was Amos, but not as Sarah knew him. His coat was gone, replaced by a pressed suit, his hair neatly combed. He stood tall, his eyes bright with something she hadn't seen before, purpose. The room fell silent as an older man in a decorated military jacket stepped forward. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice commanding, "we are here to honor Colonel Amos Wright, a hero who saved countless lives in the war." Gasps echoed. The man recounted Amos's past, a decorated officer who led a daring rescue mission, saving dozens from a besieged outpost. After the war, loss and trauma had driven him to the streets, where he hid from a world that felt too heavy. He wanted no recognition, the man said, but we found him, thanks to one person's kindness. The crowd turned to Sarah, who stood frozen, her award trembling in her hands. The man continued. Miss Sarah's gifts, her food, her notes, her belief in him, reminded Amos he was worth saving. Her kindness brought him back to us. The veteran stepped forward, saluting Amos, then Sarah. Tears streamed down her face as Amos met her gaze, his own eyes glistening. "Thank you," he whispered, loud enough for her alone. Karen and the others stood speechless, their earlier words hanging heavy. Karen's face flushed with shame, and another colleague wiped away tears. The crowd erupted in applause, not just for Amos but for Sarah, whose quiet acts had sparked this moment. Amos took the microphone, his voice steady. "I was lost," he said, "but someone saw me. Not the hero, not the soldier, just me. And that was enough." The gala became a turning point. Amos reconnected with his old unit, who helped him find a home and counseling. The library, inspired by Sarah's example, launched a program to support the city's homeless, with Amos as its first advocate. Sarah's colleagues apologized, their judgment replaced by admiration. Karen, once the loudest critic, began volunteering at a shelter, Her perspective shifted by the man she'd dismissed. Sarah continued her work, her heart fuller but her routine unchanged. She still left notes for others she met, small, quiet gestures that rippled outward. Amos visited her often, no longer a shadow but a friend. One day, he handed her a note of his own. "You gave me back my life." Sarah tucked it into her pocket, her eyes bright with tears. She didn't need the world's applause. She had seen the humanity in someone when no one else did, and that was enough. The city began to change, too. Stories of Sarah's kindness spread, inspiring others to act. A coffee left for a stranger, a coat donated, a kind word offered. Amos spoke at schools, sharing his story and Sarah's role in it, urging others to see beyond appearances. The library gala, once a night of pomp, became a symbol of compassion, its legacy carried in every small act that followed. Sarah's quiet insistence on kindness had not only lifted one man but had woven a thread of hope through a city that had forgotten how to care. In the end, Sarah knew the truth. Heroism wasn't always loud or grand. Sometimes it was a sandwich, a note, a moment of seeing someone as they truly were. And in those moments, the world could change.